Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Caffeinated Coaching. I am talking to Sunrise Trails Coaching today. A good friend of mine, Brittany. We are going to talk about getting your shit together and all things trail running, RPE, pace, strength training. So I'm excited to bring her in. Also, be sure to join us on Tuesday for a special episode of Fireside Chat where we're going to have a home for the holidays kind of roundtable of chatting with a bunch of different people. It will be exciting. And as always, tune into the Everyday Athlete Podcast Network for all of our shows. Someday I'll get that right. Anyway, let's bring Brittany. Hi, it's Brittany
Hey,
bitch.
it is Brittany bitch. I'm here. Yay.
So before I ask you a bunch of questions, I'm just going to tell the audience that Brittany was my very first Phoenix friend. I always referred to her that way. I joined a pizza and pint run, so pizza and beers at the local running store when Jason was out of town and I had nothing to do. And funny part, I don't eat pizza or drink beer, but and I had already run that day, so I had done a sweat test that was like an hour long in the Phoenix heat that morning because it was July, and I really had no intentions of actually running much, but I intended to find a friend, and I did. So it was
And I
great
think
that Brittany was welcoming.
the funniest part of that story, outside of you not have liking or not eating beer or pizza, is that we were two endurance athletes who run long distances, and normally you don't find a lot of those at like local community like road runs. Like
True.
you can. It's not that they don't go, but it's definitely not something. So I always thought that was funny how we had both like done these long distances, and it's like we started talking and we're like, holy cow, how are
Why
we
are we
meeting
here?
right now?
Why are
Yeah,
we
yeah.
What is it that brought us here
Yeah.
on this day?
Yes.
Which
Yes.
was funny because then I think we both did the mile because you hung out with me, and
Yeah.
that run usually has like a 5, a 3, and a 1, and we were like, let's do nothing.
Yeah.
That's not to say 1 mile is nothing, but it was uh, it was a very slow walk, I think, or some of a run and some of a walk.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yep.
it was a good time, and I'm so glad I met you. But we are actually here. So the Get Your Shit Together is Brittany's latest program. So I'm going to tell you right now, we're going to talk about this first because I just spilled coffee all over my computer and my microphone and the floor. So I might be
Yeah.
spooky during this chat, but tell everyone about the Get Your Shit Together thing you're doing.
Yeah. Well, no, and I had to scramble to find my AirPods before like I got on here. So I mean, it was definitely a whole like, where's everything at? But yeah, so this is a newer program. I'm not offering it like every single day. I'm just offering it like every few months, like every probably 2 to 3 months. But what it is it's just me helping people. And a lot of times it's runners who reach out to me, but it can be anybody who finds themselves like not making time for what they really want to make time for. They're either making excuses, they have problems like setting time aside for themselves because they feel selfish or guilty. They're like, I need to be this to my partner. I need to be this to my kids. I need to be this for my work. But they're never putting themselves like first in that first seat and really looking and seeing what's going on. A lot of them have either built some resentment too because of that, or maybe not necessarily resentment to others, but just they just keep punishing themselves with it. So the whole program gives very simple steps to take. We do 3 calls all together. In the beginning, the middle, and the end. It could be 60 or 90 days. I prefer 90 days because I just feel like it's more helpful to like have that cadence. But we do intentional work together of like, hey, here's how my day normally looks. What do we need to shift? What are the wins that you had? What are the losses you had? Like just to be able to have those conversations. But what it's really meant to do is get people thinking intentionally about where the heck they're spending their time and where do they want to spend their time. So, but there's work involved. It's not just like me telling you, here's what you're going to do. The person I'm coaching is doing most of the work, and I'm there to help them, help push them along. So sometimes
That's
pull,
awesome.
just
So it's
depends.
not
Yeah,
specifically structured. It's more structured to the person and what they're trying to accomplish. That is an
exactly.
excellent program. That is a great
Yes.
program. I am a big fan of accountability. I think I talked about that on the last episode too. Accountability there's theories behind it, scientific theories
Mm-hmm.
of how it works and why it works. So that's a really cool program. If
Yeah.
you're ever interested, anyone out there in getting your shit together, Brittany or I can help you out with that. But let's talk about trail running
Ooh, my
because
favorite.
I don't think you've had much of it. Adria, who I interviewed a few weeks ago, she did 100 this year, trail run. So that was a trail running episode. But you coach athletes specifically. You do road running, but you do a lot of trail running, correct?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I would do 100% trail running if I could. But but yeah, so for me in trail running, like I've been trail running now actually a little over 6.5 years, and I jumped into ultras within like 4 months of starting trail running because if you get in that community, it kind of explodes in a good way. Like you just start meeting people and everything gets exciting and like, let's do all the things. But then I also know trail runners who also haven't never done an ultra. They love the community and they love to get out there and do like 10Ks and 5Ks and 25Ks. And it's all awesome, but it's just part of being in that piece. But where I was going with that too is like I started on the east side as a trail runner, and there's a very big community in Phoenix and on the east side, but the west side, it feels like there's just a little bit lacking. Like there's just not, and it's not for lack of trying. It's just like the west side doesn't have trails to get to that are very easily accessible. So part of my so like I one-to-one coach, but it's also been trying to build community. And I had a group run that was like kind of going, and there's a few like people who would join regularly, and it was amazing. And people have made some friends, and it's still small. But even this coming Sunday, I'm actually collaborating with another coach, and we're going to bring people together on the west side, only women. But like really excited for that too, because for me, coaching is like helping people one-to-one. Like I do that. I build programs. I help them with mindset, but at the same time, it's building a community so we can have each other. Because first of all, I can't always be there for everybody, but the community is what really drew me into trail running. It wasn't the running itself. It was the actual people who were a part of it.
And that's what brings people to Run, Try, Bike, Run, Try, Bike.
Yeah.
Is the community of people. We hear over and over again that I love your community that you've built. And it's a community across the country. Yeah. But I think that's probably why you and I ended up at that pizza run on the same day, is because there really isn't. I lived on the west side. You had just moved to the west side or were moving. And there really isn't like a group over there. And so we put that together for a while, and you and your husband were leading a hiking club, and we were bringing snacks and goodies and enjoying that. And it was great, but it's hard to keep everyone together, as you know. And so
it is.
It's funny. I jumped right into ultras as well, but then went backpedaled to lesser trail runs. And because in Phoenix, you can do like a trail run, like a race every weekend, pretty much, if you wanted to. And so it's easy to just be like, I think I'll drop into the 16K or something, or the 25K, and just run it like you would a training run, really. But so something you and I have talked about quite a bit is using RPE, rate of perceived exertion, versus using pace especially on a trail. But tell everyone why you prefer like not pace training on a trail.
I actually have a conversation a lot because of my athletes and explaining it to them. And a lot of people like to pay attention to that pace. Like our brain is so like, oh my gosh, I'm only going this fast. I'm not, trying as hard as, I should be. I'm not pushing as hard, I should say, not trying. But when it comes to trails and even on the roads too, I actually use RPE on the roads too. I prefer it way more. It is about effort. So like when you think about how you're supposed to be running, I hate the word supposed to be, but that is like about 80% of runs are supposed to be. But how we run is like to get stronger and powerful and faster. We need to keep that RPE, that rate of perceived exertion, so that effort low. We need to keep it at an easy effort where we could talk to somebody the entire time. Lori and I know how to talk to each other the entire time if anybody wants to ever do that. But we can so it's keeping that heart rate down, but I don't even pay attention to heart rate because guess what, guys? These watches, they're not accurate. Our Garmin's, our Coros, they're just not accurate. So like being able to just look at a chart, there are charts everywhere, y'all. I share them on my Instagram all the time, but it shows when you're a 2 to a 5, you're smiling. You have a little smiley face. You're just going along and you're breathing, you're talking, you're having fun, you're bouncing around. And that's how you do build some power and endurance. But then also that other 20%, you're going to work on some pushing. So you're going to take that RPE up, normally between even like 7 to 10. I do some, and 10 means it's going to hurt. It is. I have a running coach myself, and he'll send me something. He's like, this should hurt. And it hurts. Like if you hit that 10, and not hurt where it's actually pain, it's your lungs are just like burning. So the reason we use that though, is because it doesn't matter, especially on a trail, the pace. I could be at a hard effort at the time, and I'm going uphill. So my pace is like a 16-minute mile, 17-minute mile, but I am pushing. You better believe it. And then there's other times where like I'm on a flat and it's easy and I'm doing like 12-minute mile. No big deal, but it doesn't matter because it's about effort. It's about how you feel. Today, my run was an easy run. My legs felt fresh and my lungs actually just felt a little bit like tired, like my allergies are bothering me. And as soon as I knew, I was like, I could not hold a conversation, I backed down. And it was slower than I normally run that trail. But I knew what I needed to do.
Yeah, so you did the run properly. You took it
Yeah.
easy, even though,
Yeah.
maybe you felt so good, you were like, I could push it today. But that wasn't the point of today.
Mm-hmm.
So
No.
I do want to ask you on behalf of Fitness Road Mitch. He asked if you do any kind of nutrition advice, coaching.
Yeah, so most of my like nutrition advice is along the lines of like running and like prepping for the run, either during the run or like how they eat through the week. It's not necessarily I leave really nutrition stuff. I'm like, hey, go to nutritionist or a registered dietitian because there's so many nuances. But if it's like very, I don't even want to say basic because it can get more complicated. But when we talk about in a run, I have my athletes experiment with food. So we talk about food. We talk about okay, what can you eat when you're running? Eat real food early, switch to gels and chews later. But I'm very specific with each athlete. And I'm like, try this, try, we have different things. And as you run longer, you have to adjust how your nutrition is for that. So the nutrition coaching will say that I do with that is running base, the long run base, especially. And then through the week, if somebody just says, you know what, I am hungry all the time, because as you're adjusting to longer runs, you got to eat more. And so sometimes I'm like, hey, like, I'm not going to like give you like, eat this, eat this, eat this, because that's not what a coach does. But I'm going to be like, hey, what are you eating now? Because I can calculate calories pretty quickly. And that I calculate, and they're doing 1,500 calories. And I'm like, dude, you just ran 26 miles on a Saturday. Like,
You need to go eat something.
you need to go eat something. But like, it is like in my brain, it's natural, but I've realized I wasn't always natural with this. Like I had a transformation too. So I put
Yeah.
myself back in that space in my brain. So when I explain it to somebody else, I'm like, here's what I did to learn. And I'm going to coach you through that.
So many of us have had kind of the transformation. So the big joke
Mm.
kind of on threads in the last day or so has been, does Jason earn himself a pizza party this week? And it came from a TV show where the therapist was like, that's not pizza party behavior. And so but last night I did a hard run yesterday. And like it was like a 10 up a hill, I swear. Like there was a point in the run where I was like, I don't even know why I do this anymore. Like I am so much better at so many other things in life. Like I could, but I love it. And so I do it. But the joke last night was like second dinner. Like, should we go get a pizza for second dinner? Because I was so hungry and like
Yeah.
we were both just like so hungry from running. But I
Heck
understand
yeah.
your perspective. Like we are not, even if we have nutrition certificates with both of us are certified personal trainers. You are correct. Yes.
Mm.
And nutrition certified, but registered
Yeah.
dietitians are really where it's at for getting
Yep.
specific life nutrition education. And I have
Yep.
recommendations of more than one if anybody needs them. So I am planning to run a second 100 miler in 2025, my second time. And I am going to actually do my best to fuel with 7 Summit snacks, chocolate bars. Kristen is now a new friend of mine, who is one of the founders of the company. And this is chocolate made for fueling us through long runs and through these events. It's crafted to conquer is one of their taglines. So we're going to see how training with chocolate goes.
How
And
does it melt? I'm curious now because like Arizona, that shit's gonna melt. So like, is it like melt free?
so it's in a package. I didn't even anticipate
Ah.
talking about this today, but I have some here. But it's in a package that you can rip the top when when it's melted, and it's like a gel, and then you just squeeze. And so it
Oh.
is built to like, it doesn't melt as fast as some chocolate would, in my opinion, when I've used it. But once it does, you can turn it into essentially a gel. And so you can just squeeze it into your mouth and it's not a mess. It's just like, I mean, okay, I started my running life with the Cliff Mocha shots, the little
Oh
gels,
yeah.
and everyone basically would laugh at me because they're like, you look like a 5-year-old when you're done with a half marathon. You've got like chocolate over your face. So I'm anticipating looking like a 5-year-old at this 100 miler with like chocolate everywhere. It's fine.
I will be
But
there with pictures. I'll be taking
yes.
pictures. That will
Oh,
be.
I already decided you were pacing. Good. Thanks for coming on board. Hold my chocolate, lady. So, what is your favorite distance to run?
Oof, man. I mean, I have fallen in love with the 100K because like there's something like it still takes, a good chunk of time, but it's also not the same as anything longer where it's like I'm out there overnight and all of that stuff. I feel like my recovery is pretty good from that. So like I really do like it because I feel like it pushes like that the physicality a little bit more, the mental space of it, the emotional space. I cry every time I ran 100K, just so everybody knows. It just comes out. I don't know why. But like, so I would say that is my favorite for that reason. I do enjoy the 50K though too, for the fact of it's still hard, but like you're done in like 6 or 7 hours, depending on who you are. But like, you know, but it's like I'm done in about 6 or 7 hours at most normally. So like, hey, like, and I still get to like hang out at the finish line, and like there's that community involvement too, where it's just really, really fun. So, but my next race is actually a 25K, and I do not normally sign up for things below an ultra. So,
Yeah, I'm
yeah.
surprised.
That's it. But my coach is convincing me. He's like, you need to see what you built. He's like, you got to see that speed you've been building in. So we're taking one on in January.
I think that that is great. I think that, and I have a question coming in. Like, actually, I think it's great to test your speed once in a while. The question,
Mhm.
how would you say the training for a 50K versus 100K versus 100-mile changes for athletes?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it has to do with just the amount of volume, like how that looks. So, like, obviously, like a 50K is less than 100K and 100 miler. So, like, the volume's going to look different. Like your weekly runs, you're going to be having longer like runs between a 50K and 100K during the week, you know, in that training. And then like even on the weekends, especially up to a 100 miler. And this is kind of there's actually been a lot of research going on around if back to back runs are a good idea anymore, because that used to be a big thing, like just like that's what you do and you'll be fine. There's research coming out, and it's not for everybody because we're individuals, and that's why one-to-one coaching is great. But some people do not recover on back-to-back runs well enough. Like, and it ends up taking them back in their training. I don't respond well to long back-to-back runs. I could
I
do a
don't either.
30 miler one day, and maybe the next day you can put me out on for like an hour, maybe, but
Mhm.
my body does not respond super well to that kind of like, from going from a 6 hour run to like a 3 or 4. Like, I just don't, and I don't recover the next week well. So it affects that week. But there's some people who do. But sorry, the whole point that I know I said, I always ramble on my questions. I can't
I do
help it.
too.
But
It's
if,
fine. We're fine.
50K, like 50K training is like closer to like what you would think of a marathon training, where you know what, you could run 4 days a week and be able to do it. I prefer the 5 days. I do, but 4 days we can get you ready physically, mentally, and emotionally to do that. Like totally. When it comes to getting up to the 100K and 100 miler, I mean, I'll do up to 6 days a week. I will not run 7 days a week, like ever. Like there is always a day that needs some kind of recovery. So I would, but as you get closer to those races, 100K and 100 miler, I'm going to throw in another day for sure. Like without a
So
doubt, you're
you'll
going to
do
have to get
two
that in.
long runs in a week, maybe for a 100-miler, but not back to back.
Yeah, that's what I would do for me. There are other like so there are other people who can do the back to back, but my long runs, when I say like a long run, like I've had one that was 2.5 hours on a Thursday, and then on a Sunday I did like a 6 hour, um, and it worked for me. Like it just my
Yeah,
body
it works
responds well
better.
to it.
I
Yeah.
don't work well with
Yep.
back-to-back runs, and maybe it's something female. I might have to look at the research with that if there's enough research of females that maybe the
There's
back-to-back run does not work that well for females.
That's
Jason
what I've
and
been trying to
I,
look into. That's
yeah,
where I'm like, guys, give me some more research on women. And there's some, Lori, but there's not a lot yet. So yeah.
that's the way it is with all women's research because we didn't actually
Yep.
allow really any kind of female feminist scientists. I did an entire doctorate paper on feminists and feminism in science and how we opened up entire new ideas when women
Mm-hmm.
became scientists. So we need more and more
Yeah,
research on women. But Jason is
it's
saying that
true.
he likes the 4 to 5 one day and 2 to 3 the next day. And everybody who's ever heard me talk about him knows that I always say Jason is a different little bird than most people. He's the only person I know who can go out at like a 10 and stay at a 10. Like there's something in his will to survive that will just keep him. And he'll tell other people that, oh, you just all gas all the way. And people are like, that's not going to work for me. And I can attest, yes, he's over here, all gas, no brakes producing. And I say, show up and blow up to him all the time. Um, but he has a way of all gassing for a longer than most of us can. So I don't know that he's an excellent coach to anyone who's coached with him. He's an excellent coach for other people to do things in other manners, but for himself, he has his own way. And it doesn't sound like it works for Brittany and I.
No, I've got, well, and that's like, sometimes I do get 2 workouts a week, like speed works. Like sometimes it's built into my long run, and then I always have a speed day or a speed or a hill day. And I will say those are pretty critical for running. Like, I don't think you have to do them 100%. Like, if somebody's like, I just want to finish this race and I'm going to build my aerobic, and you can do that, you can. But I also see like there's so much change whenever you start pushing yourself and doing longer intervals, especially when you get up to that 100K, 100 miles, do longer intervals. You get so much of a physical, like, boost from that, but the mental boost I think is almost as important, if not more important, because I've done some really long intervals with who's coaching me now, Pete Mortimer, who is awesome. And like, he had me doing some like really, really like 10-minute intervals and like pushing myself. And I was like, I'm going to die. I'm going to die. But then like I did something hard a couple weeks later. And my brain was like, you just freaking sprinted 10-minute intervals. Like, psh, you're fine. You're fine. So I always think about that too. There's definitely a mental component. It's not just physical. And I have athletes ask those questions too. Like, I don't understand this workout. I'm like, well, here's the physiological adaptation we're working towards, but here's the mental piece we're working towards too. So
Yeah, it's
yeah.
definitely a big, like, a lot of this is mental. Like, at
Yeah.
no point past like 50K is it all physical, and even that's going to be mental for a lot of people. But I'm with you. I've never
Mm-hmm.
done a standalone 100K, but at the 100K mark, the 100 miler, I was throwing myself a party, and then you're like 8 more miles into it, and you're like, oh, why am I still doing this? And so
Yeah.
I can see why you are a big fan of the 100K. And
Mm-hmm.
I actually was thinking, do I do 100K next year? Because I don't have a standalone 100K yet. I did back-to-back 50Ks at ATY last year. And so I just said 5 seconds ago that I'm not good at back-to-back long runs. I would say that second day was definitely more of a walk, not much of a run, but I
Mm-hmm.
completed 50K back to back there, and that was fun. But I don't know that I would ever do it again. I just really didn't
It's
feel like
definitely
moving
something.
overnight.
Yeah, it is. And especially if your body's kind of like, and then we have to think about our cycles and our hormones and all that stuff too, because like that can really impact it. But that's what, like, I love the 100K, but I would love to eventually do a 200 one day. And I know that I'm going to have to do some training that probably has a couple of back to back somethings. But again, I'll be coached at that time. And hopefully I tell him all what goes on, and we'll just have to adjust and figure it out, because when you're doing longer distances, you do have to learn how to do things that are hard. And sometimes, as long as like we're not pushing myself to injury, like there are things that sometimes you just have to do.
You
So
might have to walk some. You might have.
what? Ah, no.
Brittany is a through and through competitor like Jason. Um, I'm like, guys, can't we just walk up this hill? And they're like, come on. My favorite thing, favorite memory other than the pizza and pints was at sunrise when we were hiking with the group, but I was actually deciding to run that day and you were trying to take the group. And I kept going the wrong way and I added like 2 miles to my run. But she told the entire group, she's like, don't follow Lori. Like she's going the wrong way.
Yeah, I was like,
Like you
no,
knew
no.
I was going to end up looping back around to find you because I was like,
Yeah,
how
I
do you
was
get off
like,
this hill? I just did not
yeah.
know how to get off that hill. But so that's
That's
why
a
we
confusing trail. I've been out there actually several times
it
now, and that's a confusing kind of weird thing that happens. So yes, yes.
It's got like a couple loops and it is very so shout out to Phoenix people
Hmm.
that run at sunrise. It's a
Yeah,
very confusing trail because
yeah,
you don't realize to get back out, you have to go back down and uphill. You feel like you just came uphill, so it should be down. So when you get to the down and you see the up again, you're like, wait, I'm going the wrong way. So you go back
yeah.
and then you realize that finally that you were not going the wrong
Well,
way.
and if you go down the wrong direction, you actually end up on the opposite side of the parking lot, which I have.
Yes.
And I'm like, I'm not where I'm supposed to be at
Jason
all.
did
Like,
that.
this is
He was
not.
like, "This isn't the parking lot." So, he had that moment. We've both added like 2 to 3 miles on a run there just by
Yeah,
accidentally going the wrong way. So, it's a mind bend because there are little trails everywhere. But,
yeah.
you guys are true and true competitors. I have a little bit more of that, "Hey, let's relax and have a little bit more fun." And so I too would like to do a 200 at some point. I think mine
Yeah.
is going to be the Oregon 200 probably. Um,
Oh, yeah.
I
That's
lived in
what,
the area once upon a time,
yeah.
and I just like the way that they've built their race.
Heck
So
yeah, my friend Ashley did that one a couple of years ago. That was
yes,
her first
that's
200. That's
right.
right. You know Ashley. You know Ashley.
Yes,
So yeah,
hi,
she said it was
Ashley.
amazing. It was also her first time hallucinating. So yay.
I hallucinated during my 100, which was ironic because Jason had never hallucinated and he hallucinated while pacing me at like the same moment practically. And he was like, "Is that a Paul Bunyan blow up in the distance?" I'm like, "Who would have a blow up of Paul Bunyan?" And he was like,
Uh,
"No, like way over there, I see Paul Bunyan." And I was like, "I don't know what you're talking about."
no,
And
no.
he's chatting from the back room saying people in the woods who live in cabins. Yes, it was a cabin in the woods. We found out the next day when it was light out and all. But I hallucinated like cinder blocks in the middle of the trail, like kind of like your brain saying stop. There's bricks here. Don't go any further. I of course just walked around them or over them or something, but it was a wild hallucination. Um, but Oregon for 200, I'm sure you probably have to almost hallucinate being up that
I
long.
would think, I mean, your body's pushing so hard, your brain's not, even if you sleep a little bit, like nothing, it's something else. I'm excited to do something that I was hallucinating. Like, I'm like, like, I hope I have a pacer at that time because I think that would be better. But
Yeah,
I'm like,
that's what
that
I'm
sounds
always worried
cool.
about. That's what I'm worried about at this 100 the next time is like being out there alone hallucinating. I'm hoping that
Hmm.
that's not because I had a pacer during my little bricks in the road moments. It's just so obvious what your brain is trying to tell you from that.
Yeah,
Like that
yeah,
hallucination is almost like a dream where you're like, I get it. Like I should not be here.
yeah.
I
But
should be done.
I'm not gonna listen. I'm gonna ignore you and I'm gonna keep going. Like
Yes,
this.
and it never happened again. But the
Yeah.
Oregon 200, shout out to Go Beyond because I ran their Bristow 24, 12, 24. I think they may have added a 6 hour too now. And they put on a good race. If you ever have a chance to go to a Go Beyond race, they put on a good race. And they're very caring race directors as well. I was actually like, it was 90 degrees that day and I was just so hot. It was probably like as equal humidity. And they were actually coming
Mhm.
up to me asking me, "Are you okay?" Because I'd stopped at the aid station for I didn't feel like it was that long. Maybe it was that long. Maybe I was just camping out there. I don't know. But yeah, so they actually came to make sure that I was safe and okay. Um,
That's awesome.
so,
Yeah.
is there anything that you would give for specific advice that someone wants to get into trail running who hasn't been a trail runner?
Oh man, I've got a lot of advice on that one. It really depends on the person. I will say if you have the opportunity and there are as a group running or a group trail run, go to one of those. They are amazing people. I know some people do have social anxiety or maybe are more introverts. And if you're not comfortable, don't do that. But they are some of the most welcoming people you will ever meet. So like if you have that opportunity, I say, hey, if you've never trail run before, like definitely go to a group. Um, I don't want you to invest in all the gear in the beginning, but know that if you're going to a technical trail and you have normal road running shoes, it might be a little slippery. So I would hate for you to invest in trail shoes already, but just be prepared for that. Like hey, if you have normal shoes, but like if you go to one run and you're like, I love this, I want to do it more. First of all, the gear is going to add up quickly because it's very exciting. But get yourself a good, go to a running store, get fitted for a pair of trail shoes because if you get the wrong, I mean, wrong shoes aren't good in general, but I feel like if you get the wrong trail shoes, you're
Yeah.
asking for a lot of hurt, a lot of hurt. So
I
it's
have I'm of the opinion also that it depends on the type of trail you're on because I have run up and down the West Coast and
mm-hmm,
Arizona and Colorado. And there are different types of trails. The Phoenix trails are different than the LA trails, that are different than the
they
Oregon
are.
trails, are different than the Washington.
Mm-hmm.
And so in Phoenix, you want a tougher shoe because there's so
Yep.
many, I'm gonna call them stabby rocks. And I
Yeah.
also call them toe poppers because they're in that dirt so hard. If you hit it with your toe, you're going flying out the rock.
Yep.
Trust me, I've
Mm-hmm.
done it a few times. Everybody's like, "Again? You felt like it?" Yes, I felt it.
Yeah.
Pick up my feet. That's the advice I got the last time at a race. You need to pick up your feet more. I know. I was trying to pass you, and now you're helping me off the ground. Great.
Well, no, but it's a good point. That's another good tip. Pick up your feet when you're trail running. You have to walk. You are actually. I love it. I think trail running's fun and interesting, but you got to look at where you're stepping. Like that's a huge thing. But the biggest piece of advice I think I have because I had to get out of my head, as Lori has alluded to, I am a competitor. I like to win. I like to run fast. Um, And so what I learned is the trail running is just slower. When you are out there, it is obvious that you are going to be slower, but you have to let that happen. Like people do not always like realize they get mad at their pace in the beginning. And some people don't come back to trail running because they're like, oh my God, like I normally can run an 8-minute mile and I'm running like 11-minute miles. But that's what you have to expect. And expect some power hiking. Lori laughs about how like I have to run all the time, but I do have to power hike sometimes. And by the way, power hiking is walking, just so everybody knows. We just call it power hiking to sound like a badass.
Yeah, we have to sound cooler.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't walk it. I power hiked that. You don't understand.
Yeah. Oh, when I run on the roads, I have a trail runner shirt. It says I'm a trail runner whenever I'm running on the roads, just so people know. So.
I have a shirt that says my coach makes me run this slow.
I like it.
Because so that goes back to, we do have a question from Cheryl on Instagram, but I want to address this really fast first because Brittany mentioned that joining a group run is a good idea on a trail the first time. I'm going to be the devil's advocate on the opposite side of that. And I am going to tell you that because you're slower on the trail, just beware if you go to a group run. A lot of them will have different pace groups. You probably, if you've never been on a trail run, want to pace yourself in the back group. Even if you're like, but I can run that pace in the middle group and I don't want to be in the back group, and you want to judge yourself a little about that. You want to put yourself in the back group. As a matter of fact, we were at a run where the back group should have been me bored out of my mind. And we got there and they decided to run that back group 10 minutes per mile faster than the plan. And so I was like, I'm out. It wasn't my first time on the trail. And I was like, I'm not doing this. I did not come here for a hard run. I came here for an easy run. So I went back and did my own thing, ran the trail by myself. But if you go, just be aware. And you might even mention to one of the organizers when you get there, try not to be too introverted and scared of people. Walk up and tell them, it's your first time. This is my road pace. I don't know my trail pace. Can you like help me get in the right group or stay with someone that you know runs that pace or something? That would be my best advice, because it can be intimidating and you are going to go slower and you're going to power hike those hills, even like everybody does. So Cheryl,
that's good. That's actually spot on. So I got to add to that just for a second too. Sorry, because that it's spot on. And that's what, like, a lot of times when I look to do group runs when I first started, because I was terrified of getting lost on a trail. Like I would even look at like the group trail runs in Facebook or see like some people would even review these things so I could see what the heck was going on, because I wanted to make sure that I was going to be comfortable too. So, but she's right. Like start in the back of the pack, and what we call that the fun group or the party group.
Yeah.
So it's not even like it's the party pace. So like don't be scared, but like again, like just be open, because all of us have been new trail runners at one time. So like you're going to meet somebody there who remembers with being there, or actually has only been traveling a month, and they're going to be like, we can be best friends, like Lori and I did at Pizza and Pint. So
hey, new bestie,
yay.
Yeah, so Brittany's right. Like you might find your new best friend there too. So Cheryl on Instagram wanted to know about your recovery routine. Can you tell us about that?
Oh man, recovery? What? No. I guess I guess it's specifically if it's a race or a long run, but we'll just take the race then, like, because that is like a longer recovery, because when you race, you're pushing harder than what you've pushed probably in your training, like total. You should be at least like pushing, like because you've had easy runs, you've had intervals, you've had all this stuff. So like you're pushing yourself a little bit harder. So obviously your body's going to be a little more broken down afterwards. So what I do is I normally that entire next day, it depends how long the race is. I mean, I'm eating probably, because that first night I try to eat and I never can. And a lot of people are like that. I am not unique. Not everybody is like that, but a lot of people are like that. So that next day when my hunger kicks in, my focus is eating. And I'm not even trying to eat the best of foods like broccoli and rice, which I do love. I'm a very big meal prep, but I mean, I am eating what my body says to eat, because it is still sensitive. You just did something hard. Like your body is like still like protecting its organs. It's trying to figure out what the hell you just did. There's a lot of things happening. So like I just eat and eat and then eat some more. And then I'm already doing mobility that first day normally, and some dynamic stretching. Nothing hard, nothing like, ooh, let's like kick my legs around, but just enough to like keep that moving, get that stretch in. And it's normally for maybe 10 minutes, but I feel so much better for doing that.
Move.
Yeah.
Definitely move.
Yeah.
After my
then by
50,
sorry,
I walked. That's okay. Sorry. I try not to interrupt you. After my first 50, I walked like a mile the next day, and I had to
Mhm.
have like the most squishy Hokas on because my feet hurt.
Yeah.
And so
Well, yeah. And movement is part of recovery, but it's not going out and running or biking hard. Like it's like I do have a Peloton in here. I did do that after a race once for 10 minutes and I was happy I did that. But the screen wasn't on. It was just like, let me flesh out the legs a little bit and see how it feels. But it is getting some kind of movement in. And I will say by day 2 or 3, I may go to the trail and just do a hike, but not a hard hike. We have a goat camp here. You don't get on goat camp when you're recovering. You get on a loop that's like kind of flat. But for me, I need a little bit of a mental recovery too. And me being back on the trail, like away from the roads and walking, makes me feel much better. So it's not just physical we're talking about, but it's mental. And with that physical recovery, I mean, for my first 100K, it took me about a week and a half to really actually even think about running again, because it was just my body had never been that far. Second 100K, like I was like 5 days later, I felt great. I still gave myself 2 extra days, but like it is, your body gets used to those. I don't say used to it, but like it's more normal for that body. It's like, okay, like I don't need this full recovery time, but you do have to take the time. Like one of the hardest parts about coaching endurance athletes is getting them to take the time to rest
yeah.
and recover. And even if I say you can move, they want to run. Like they want to run. And I'm like, don't run. Like don't even do strength training just yet. Like not yet. Like hold off on it. But I do attribute a lot of my faster recovery times now to not only how much I lift, but what my lifts are, like how trail running specific they are and how running specific they are and functional they are.
So how many days per week do you lift? Because I know that lifting is very important to you.
Yeah, mine's normally 3 to 4. It just kind of depends on the week. There's sometimes it's 4 just because things fall better, and sometimes it's 3. It is what it is. But like I've mentioned already, like I do even a day where I'm only working my foot and ankle and like Achilles and calves. Like that's it. Because on trails, any of you have been on that, you're moving a lot. Like there's things happening. And I realized this. I was finishing up a 26.5-mile run, super technical terrain, and I was almost done. And I realized I had not turned my ankle once. And that is like, and it's normal to turn an ankle, guys. Not saying sprain it, but like when it gets loose, your ankles kind of just do some wobbly things. And I was like, I just did a really hard run and not one like thing happened like that. So that's always a super specific one. I obviously do a leg day. If you guys could see my quads, you would see that. That is how I've always been proud of my legs. But you have to do upper body. So many people don't realize the upper body is like, and what it is some people be like, well, I did like 10 minutes. And I'm like, hey, if that's what you could fit in, that's great. But if you could do more, like, let's get those shoulders moving, because that is it's part of like running, but you have a pack on when you're running. I mean, you need it for life. I'm very big on promoting women to like lift. We need it for more than running. We need it for life. Our bone density starts going down. Our metabolism goes to hell really quickly, like all of these things. And it's super important. But if you're brand new to it, I say do 2 days a week. Like that's it. And what the only thing I will say here that maybe my tough love, don't make dumb excuses about not doing it. There is so much stuff on YouTube that's free. There's so much you can learn. I'm not saying go to a gym, but if somebody's like, I don't know how to do strength training, YouTube. You can YouTube. I've never strength trained before. I've got 15 minutes and you can find so many things. So like, don't let that stop you because it is so, so important to do that.
I agree. And
Yeah.
so if you gave them 2 days a week, what would you say? Like if someone only has 2 days a week, would you do full body both days? Would you do an upper and lower split? How would you break it up?
I would probably do a lower day. And then that second day, I would do a upper body and then throw in the foot and ankle movements too, because the foot and ankle movements do not take as much time as what some of the other movements do, or the ones that I do, I should say. So you could do both. So that's kind of a full body one, but you're focusing on that foot, ankle, Achilles, calf area, your upper body, and then the other day would be legs. So quads, hamstrings, glutes, all that
I didn't
good
want to hear
stuff.
that. I like full body. I like swimming and I like working my shoulders and I like
Yeah, I do too. That's where I gain muscle. Like, or when I cut, like you can
yeah,
just see like the muscles
same.
up here. So I love it. I love it. Like, but it's more like, well, we do need the upper body, but I'm well aware that our legs are like doing a lot of the work.
It's
So
amazing though
yeah.
how much people don't realize you use your upper body when you run. Like
Oh
even
my God,
without a pack, but with the pack,
yeah.
it's 100% necessary because
Mm-hmm.
you're just not used to the weight you're carrying. So your
Yeah.
shoulders start to get annoyed. And if you get a certain
Mm-hmm.
age of a female's life, frozen shoulder becomes a possibility or just an
Yep.
achy shoulder that people get. And
Yep.
so you want to keep that mobility on your arms and shoulders as well. I actually had a nurse friend that I ran a back to back Disney 10K and then half marathon with many years ago. I was swore I was never doing a Disney race, and then friends talked me into it, and I was here at Disneyland running a race, running back-to-back races. But anyway, she was a nurse, and she hadn't trained all that well, and that I recall. And by the end, though, I had caught up to her because I started at a different corral, and I had caught up to her, and she was like, I swear I'm having a heart attack. Like my shoulder hurts and my back hurts. And like I'm assessing myself for heart attack symptoms right now. And I was like, it's because you're not used to moving your arms for this long, because you haven't ran like a solid training cycle that I recall. So anyway, it can feel like you're actually in danger, the amount that you're going to use your arms when you run distances.
Yeah.
And so
It's true.
work the top half of you, work the bottom half of you. But I would agree, the leg day is very, very important for what we're doing. The mobility, especially too, because most of us, I think, that have done this a long time have some sort of calf, Achilles, foot. Like we had something weird at some time and it's never quite healed the exact. For example, I almost tore my Achilles. I had micro tears in it. And so that Achilles will never be at like 100%. Like I have to keep it stretched out. I use the, whatever that thing's called, the hammer thing.
Oh yeah, I thought you were gonna say slant board, but the trigger point.
Yeah, like trigger point stuff. I use a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
I have been on slam boards and stuff, but I don't use those regularly. I do also find that if you don't have access to all the fancy tools, like Brittany said, don't run out and buy them. If you find your like calves getting tight, try to find a step, like if you have stairs, and just hang your heels off of the back of that step for like a minute each day. And you will find that your calf and your Achilles get looser and you can get more mobility in those ankles. I actually don't have any problems with ankles on the trail. And I think I attest that to the fact that I run like midfoot, forefoot. So my ankles really never, unless I'm climbing, in which case I'm like, oh, my ankles are like, how a rock gets under one side of your foot and then your ankle's like,
oh yeah,
I don't like this very much.
Yeah. Oops.
So that's probably the biggest time I feel the ankle problem on the trails, but it is a big thing. And lifting is very important for all of us, whether you run trails or not. It's just, it's good for your body. So we're both going to preach, go do some lifting, go do some
lifting, do YouTube. If you can't afford a coach or can't buy a plan or can't find a plan you like YouTube has so much and Pinterest has so much, like there's always something to do. And if you don't have access to a gym or aren't comfortable, I don't have access to weights, they're going to give you suggestions on body weight. They're going to be like, hey, go pick up, that milk jug and put water in it. And like, that can be weight. Like there's always an option to do it. And you might not always think of it because it's so outside the box, but like give yourself an opportunity to like learn and do it because it is like, I'm super passionate about it. So
bands you can get a set of bands like pretty cheap and they don't take up any space in your house, and you can use them for arm stuff. You can use them for leg stuff. They can be like long ones that you can even use for like overhead presses and squats and stuff. So I would advise, if you're like, I don't have space for a bunch of weights, I don't have access to a gym, go buy a good set of bands, and you can find so much on YouTube and Pinterest for those too. So I think that's great advice. Well, I have had a fun 45 minutes chatting with you. I always have fun.
Yeah.
We didn't do our question. What is your favorite caffeinated drink? Are you still going to beer night? That's not caffeinated, but that's
we have two different questions happening. No, beer night. So beer night is Wednesday. So I was there last night. So just so everybody knows, every Wednesday night, typically, not next week because it's Christmas, but like I meet with some friends and we always go to a different brew pub or brewery and we have dinner and we have a beer or two. I've had some people like, you've got to be 100% healthy. And I'm like, beer has no nutritional value at all. It's something I like to have
bagel.
Quick.
I don't drink, but it's a liquid bagel, maybe.
Yeah. So I'm just like, so no, like that's what I do. So so I am still doing that. Again, guys, just so you know, it doesn't help your training, but you know what? Mentally, I like to hang out with my friends and I like to have a brew from time to time. So
that's
it is what I do.
That's part of recovery.
That's part
the other
of it.
is caffeinated. What is your favorite caffeinated?
I mean, I'd say that's easy, but I mean, just coffee, and I put a little splash of vanilla almond milk in it. Like that's what I have every day. Love it. If I'm going to grab a fancy coffee, it's an oat milk latte at Driftwood, which is right down the road from me. And it's just, it's just oat milk. I don't normally put anything else in it. Like that's it.
Anyone who
So.
hears me rant, I always rant about I don't like Phoenix coffee. I think the water must be what makes it bad
Oh
because
yeah.
the water is not great in Phoenix.
Mhm.
Like drinking water, it's good. It's fine for you. It just doesn't taste
Yeah.
good to me.
Yes.
But I've never been to Driftwood Coffee. Next time I'm there,
Ah,
you will have to
okay.
take me to
Yeah.
Driftwood so I
Yes, it's like a half mile from here. Heck yeah. Like that's the place that I know. That or Union Coffee, which is also on the west side.
right
But
before we go to beer night so you can get me drunk to go up goat camp because that's the only way I'm probably going up goat camp ever again.
yeah, well, no, like I'll take you up goat camp anytime. You can chase
No.
me.
No, I've had enough
Yeah,
goat camp
yeah.
for actually I would go back up goat camp. I actually really like Mesquite Canyon on the other side,
Ah,
which you often
Mesquite's
come
fun.
down from goat camp. I like climbing up Mesquite. It's a hot
Yeah,
mess like me, so that's why I like it. All those stabby
it's
rocks.
terrific. I actually took a friend who had never been hiking out there. I actually took him hiking on the Mesquite Loop, the 8.5 mile loop, because it is one of my favorite, prettiest places out there. And it's like fun because like there is climbing that's hard, but there's some fun descents too. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I like the descent on
Yeah.
Mesquite too, but I like going up
Yeah.
it. So sometimes I would just go up it and back down it for fun. And then there's like a 4 mile loop
Ah,
there. So there's like a 4 mile
yeah.
flattish loop and then
Yep.
straight up Mesquite and back down is a good one. All
Yep.
right, we will stop chatting about Phoenix. If anyone wants to join us and meet up in Phoenix, I will make it known the next time I'm there. Otherwise, Brittany's there 24/7.
Heck yeah. And if you wanna find me, it's easy. Sunrise Trails Coaching on Instagram.
Yes.
Very
Thank you for
easy. I
chatting
keep it
with me.
easy. Yeah,
I
of
I
course.
enjoyed it, and we will do it again sometime. Thanks everybody for joining
Sounds
us.
good.